Hello guys and gals, and welcome to a new series. This is a series that I just cooked up. I've been thinking about it for a while, but this is the first episode that I've actually made, and Mr. Cow King here is coming along for the ride. Mr. Cow King is going to talk with us about the newest series for my channel. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to be calling it Diablo 2 Resurrected Abilities. So there are quite a few different abilities in the game across all of the characters. Everything from, of course, curses, poison and bone, summoning. You've got every single character has 3 different trees, and inside those trees are multiple skills, and every single one of those skills has different uses. And you might not necessarily know what those skills are good for. Maybe you look up a curse and you're like, what is this for? And you're like, well, I don't really see what that could actually be used for, and you don't use it. And, well, that's sad because it might actually be very useful. I wanted to start out with something simple, something easy, so we're going to be starting out with Amplify Damage. Amplify Damage is a curse that the Necromancer has, but it is also a curse that can be replicated on items. Items will provide a proc, essentially, a chance to cast the effect on a monster. There are also items throughout the game which have various ways that you can obtain this. So sometimes it's on striking, sometimes it's when you have been struck, sometimes it's on attack, sometimes it's just simply. You can also have items that have charges, but I do not believe Amplify Damage can be a charge. Although you can get things like a life tap as a charge. Now, Amplify Damage is one of those deceptively simple curses. When you take it at face value, it just simply says, Amplify Damage curses a group of enemies, increasing the non-magic damage they receive. Damage taken increased by 100%, mana cost 4, first level, radius 2 yards, duration 8 seconds. So not exactly a particularly potent skill if you take it at face value. If it's only increasing your damage by 100%, then it might not necessarily do that much, considering that most monsters have relatively high amounts of physical damage reduction, and also there are monsters in the game that are immune to physical damage completely, and those monsters will have, quite a good time gnawing on your bones. The thing about Amplify Damage is that Amplify Damage actually works differently than you would think. It does not increase your damage by 100%. What it does instead is it actually reduces the monster's resistance to physical defense by 100%. So let's take, for instance, a monster, a theoretical monster. He is a monster that has 50% physical damage reduction, which means that if you hit him for 100 damage, he will only take 50. If you curse him with the Amplify Damage effect, he will have his physical damage reduction reduced, and the lowest that you can ever reduce a monster's resistance to is negative 200%. Or rather, negative 100% from 100%. So think about it like this. If I had 100% damage reduction, I could go down 100 to 0 and 0 to negative 100. Now, because I am reducing his physical damage reduction by 100%, he's going from 50% positive to 50% negative, which means that now he is taking an increase in physical damage to his character. And this is before all other calculations. So when you attack him with whatever you're attacking him with, all those calculations are a different calculation. This is how much he can resist your damage once you smack him in the face. And the beautiful thing about Amplify Damage is that it does function as a break for physical resistance. And I actually have those formulas right here. Let's take a look at those real quick, shall we? So these are the formulas for breaking resistances, and as you can see, we have Conviction, Lower Resistance, Amplify Damage, and Decrepify. Now, Decrepify is another curse, and we're not going to talk about that one here, but it also reduces physical resistance. Now, as you can see here, when you are using Amplify Damage on an immune target, it has a 20% reduction in effectiveness. So essentially, it works at 20% of its rated value. Now, because Amplify Damage always does negative 100%, it is always going to be 100% divided by 5, which is, of course, a 20% reduction in resistances. So if you have a monster, for instance, that is 100% physical resistant, which means he is immune, and you cast Amplify damage on him, it will reduce his resistance by 20%, bringing him down from 100 to 80%, which in effect will create a break in his immunity. Now, Amplify damage doesn't really have a lot going for it when you beef it up in levels. The more points you put into Amplify damage, the larger the radius will get, the longer the duration gets, but it doesn't particularly do anything better. Like, it's not stronger, it doesn't reduce the physical resistance more, and for the most part, when people build Amplify damage, they usually only put 1 or 2 points in it. Maybe later at the end, if their build for some reason just has extra points laying around, they could put a couple extra points in there for the duration and the radius. But for the most part, it gets relatively ignored as far as skill points are concerned. And that doesn't mean it's a bad or a curse. That just means that it's so good that it can literally be awesome, even as a 1-point wonder. And I'd like to take you somewhere where I know that there's a physical immune monster, but I don't specifically know where physical immune monsters are. Let me go hunt one down, and I'm going to show you what it's like to break one. So it did occur to me that the ghosts, of course, in Arcane Sanctuary are, of course, immune to physical all the time. Let me go ahead and put a couple points into Vitality here so I don't die, and also grab a Golem so that I can use him as a defensive mechanic while I show you how this works. So let's see if we can find a couple ghosties. Those are not ghosties. Those are undead vampires like me. And they shouldn't be attacking me because we're, you know, we're cut from the same cloth. We and I. So here we go. We have a group of specters, and as you can see, they are immune to physical damage. If I cast Amplify damage on them, you will notice that they are no longer going to be immune to physical damage. The immune to physical damage goes away. This is what's called breaking a resistance. Now, it doesn't make them highly killable. 80% physical resistance is still 80% physical resistance. It's a lot of resistance, which means that if you hit them with 100 damage, you're still only doing 20. But it does allow you to dish out damage where you would otherwise not be able to. And this is actually really amazing. There are quite a few items in the game that do have Amplify damage on them, and I'd like to call them out really quickly. I don't really have the time to, you know, pull every single one up on camera, but I do have the time to, at the very least, tell you every single wand that has Amplify damage on it, or every single item. So the Gavel of Pain Martel de Fer has level 8 Amplify damage on it, and it is, I believe it's charges, if I remember correctly. The Gavel of Pain, let me look that up, because I was actually just talking about whether there was a item that had charges on it, and now here we are. We have an item with charges on it. So yes, it does. It has 3 charges of level 8 Amplify damage. Very low on the charges there, but certainly could come in handy in certain situations. We also have a chance to cast on striking from several items. Level 1, 4% chance from the Cranium Basher Thunderball. Level 1, 5% chance on the Gavel of Pain Martel de Fer. So the Gavel of Pain not only has charges, but it also has a chance to cast. Level 1 on the Vile Husk Sword with a 6% chance. Level 2 on Atmoscarab with a 5% chance. That's an amulet. Level 3 with a 33% chance to cast on the Lacerator Winged Axe, which is a very, very nice throwing item, but can also be used as a melee weapon as well. It also has replenishes quantity on it, so it can be found in the ethereal form and used to quite a good effect. Level 5 Amplify damage with a 2% chance on Witch Wild String Short Siege Bow, which is an extremely fast bow with 2 sockets, lots of resistances, and over 100% Deadly Strike, which can be very, very nice. If you're interested in any of these items, I probably have a video up on them, so feel free to search for that. We also have Wind Struck of level 14 Amplify damage with a 35% chance on the Brand Rune Word, which I also have a video up on. All in all, Amplify damage is one of those amazing abilities that, quite honestly, is just absolutely useful for a lot of things. Increasing your physical damage can be very, very effective to increase the damage of your skeletons, which do massive amounts of physical damage. It can also increase the damage of your revives, which, of course, if your revive is dealing out physical damage, will also increase the damage that they output. If you are utilizing a very high damage, say, Iron Golem, Iron Golems tend to do a large amount of physical damage as well, and Amplify damage will help them also. We also have some other things that you can use Amplify damage for, like, for instance, Corpse Explosion. A lot of people don't know this, but Corpse Explosion is actually two types of damage. It is 50% physical, and it is 50% fire. So when you curse a monster with Amplify damage, you will increase the physical portion of the Corpse Explosion and allow it to do a lot more damage. It doesn't necessarily need it because Corpse Explosion is very powerful on its own, but it will increase the rate at which you can kill things with Corpse Explosion and utilize less corpses. And utilizing less corpses is always a good thing because sometimes corpses are a finite resource that you might not have an infinite amount of. So getting the most out of a Corpse Explosion in certain situations with Amplify damage can be very, very useful. And Amplify damage is a very easy to use curse. I mean, you can be casting Amplify damage all the time with the relatively low mana cost of only 4. And if you put a couple points into it or you have enough plus to skills, the radius goes up to a massive, as you can see, 24 yards at level 34. And to give you an idea of how big that radius is, let's just go look real quick. I mean, look at the ridiculous radius on this. It covers like the whole screen. Pretty much everything gets cursed. It's kind of nuts. And quite honestly, I think Amplify damage is a very, very good option for a lot of Necromancers. It's a very good option for a lot of characters. You can add Amplify damage into many, many different builds to increase your damage. If you're a Zeal Paladin or a melee Barbarian, not well, maybe even a throwing Barbarian, honestly. If you are a Druid who's using shape-shifting skills, even if you were particularly like a Twister or a Tornado Druid, a lot of people don't know that Tornado and Twister are physical damage abilities. And even the fire damage abilities usually have a very high physical damage component and could get a nice boon from Amplify damage. So having a form of Amplify damage on a regular basis being procced can be very, very effective. Whether it's from your mercenary, whether it's from yourself, or whether it's from a friendly Necromancer, your friendly neighborhood Necromancer, who can cast Amplify damage for you. Amplify damage is one of probably the most amazing curses in the game. It's also notable that since it has such a long duration, as a negative bonus to you. So if Amplify damage is casted on you, it's important to note that you can combat Amplify damage in many different ways. Number one, you can have reducing curse duration effects. There are two different reduced curse duration effects in the game. One of them is cleansing that comes from the Paladin. There is an item coming in the new ladder. It's called Plague, and it does have the cleansing aura on it. And it will reduce the duration of any curse, as well as poison, by a pretty massive amount. Also, Fade, which is on the Assassin, and is on the Treachery armor, as well as Last Wish, is also a curse reducing effect. And if you have that on, it will reduce curses by a pretty massive amount as well. Another way that you can combat Amplify damage is with physical damage reduction. So, as we were talking about earlier, if a monster already has 50% physical damage reduction, you can combat that, or when you cast Amplify damage on it, it's going to cancel out 50% of your amp, essentially. If I, as a character, were to build up a massive amount of physical damage reduction, like, say, for instance, 100%, I could essentially cancel out Amplify damage if it were cast on me and be at an equal 0. However, the cap for physical damage reduction for players, not monsters, is 50%. So if I wanted to completely cancel out Amplify damage so that my character maintains that 50% physical damage reduction no matter what, I would have to be at 150% physical damage reduction. Now the downside to this is that 100% of that would be wasted. So unless you actually have Amplify damage casted on you, you will be at 150% physical damage reduction, but the cap is at 50. So 100 essentially just goes into no man's land and doesn't actually do anything. But for those brief moments that you would get cursed by Amplify damage, it's going to do a pretty massive amount to save your life. Now, there are obviously other damage types besides physical damage, and there are other considerations. But for the most part, Amplify damage is just an amazing ability that gets utilized across most of Diablo 2. And I figured it was a fitting first video for this series because, well, it's an amazing ability. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and keep watching.